This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Shaun Cole, and today I want to talk about E3 2014 and a few of the other things that I was able to see while I was there and my overall experiences. E3 is hands down the biggest gaming event of the year here in Los Angeles, and it's not only the entire LA Convention Center, but it's some nearby hotel rooms, various parties and things going on all over the place in addition to what's going on at the convention center. The moment you arrive, you start to get an idea of the amount of money being spent by these companies all lobbying to be the biggest deal at E3. I mean, this starts on the outside of the building with banners covering the entire building. Then, as you start to proceed and work your way into the halls, you see characters, you see static displays, you see, just huge banners for every game and every company out there. So once you start to get inside the actual halls of the convention center, you see these gigantic booths. It's rather amazing. Some of these things are the sizes of small cities. They're multi-stories. You've got lights, you've got flashing things, you've got characters, you've got huge static objects. It is amazing what's going on inside of this convention. Each of these booths being dedicated to maybe only one game or maybe a whole lineup of games in the case of like EA, Sony, or Xbox, places like these. You'll have a video playing center screen, just huge, bigger than life, and you'll have mobs of people. You'll have people waiting in lines to play whatever game they have showcased at each booth. It's huge, it's overwhelming, and it's the ultimate amusement park for any gamer. Now, this show is mostly dedicated to software, and there are a few exceptions to that rule. You might find a Thrustmaster tucked away in a booth somewhere, or you're going to find them being the wheel used by one of the game companies. Same thing goes for Mad Catz. You might find them tucked away in a meeting room somewhere, or get lucky enough to see their wheel on the Forza rig. Or you could just be walking around the show floor and randomly walk into Thomas of Fanatec, and he might just in a backpack be holding for you a universal hub with a GT rim attached to it for you to see for the first time. The universal hub with this rim will go for about $350 and will work with the Club Sport wheelbase. It has 4 mini button boxes, each with 3 buttons. There are 2 small levers and 2 longer levers attached to the wheel as well. There's a pair of small shifter paddles, a pair of large and fully adjustable shifter paddles. There's an encoder with 7 functions and an LED display with tuning and telemetry info. There's also a spot to plug in a 5th little box if you needed another 3 buttons. You've got all the buttons on top. It was a lot, and I gotta tell you, I love the feeling of this wheel. It had a real car feel about it. It reminded me of the Momo that I used to have in a real race car, or the Momo that I used to use on one of my rigs way back when. But this is a real feeling car wheel, and then the buttons can be kind of moved into a rotation of anywhere that you want. It's something, I was dying to take this home with me, but Thomas had to show it to others, so I'm gonna have to wait till I get one here to try on my Club Sport wheelbase as well. But that might be my favorite wheel, and I haven't even tried it yet. It's got the universal quick release, so it will come off and just replace the Formula wheel or the BMW rim, whichever one you might have there. So another thing I was able to see while I was at the E3 booth was the Playseat booth that they had there. And Playseat has become a fixture of E3, and they're one of the very few hardware companies that show up for sim racers, and they're definitely one of the few rig companies that ever show up, and they're there year after year. But what I have noticed is that each year, they're kind of stepping it up a notch. Instead of being Playseat, we make the Evolution, and that's what we make. Last year, they had the Challenge, and that was a big surprise. They had the Formula seat, that was a big surprise. So they have been moving things along. This year, they continued in that tradition. Now, they had a few different Formula seats in the various different colors. It was the first time I remember seeing a whole lineup of colors from them in that Formula rig. That was pretty cool. They also had I want to call it further along than a prototype, but let's call it a one-of-a-kind motion rig version. It was a 2-post motion rig with a hinge point in the back that was very unique to their design, and it actually moved this Formula seat complete full motion. So it's not something they have on their website and they're going to be selling just yet, but it could be the direction they're going in the future. And speaking of in the future, they also had this metal tubing rig that didn't look like any Playseat that I'd ever seen before. This was a full 2-post rig, their own molded seat, their own design, and it was showing off their new Top Gear affiliation. So this rig, it's welded up metal, it's made out of like a bronzed colored paint, and then it's put on a super base. The whole thing looks like it's going to go for about $2 grand, but again, this is something they're building one at a time. They're not really thinking of you out there running to them and buying this just yet, at least just yet, but who knows what kind of response they'll get. That would certainly change their attitude there. But it was great seeing them there, and while I was there, they actually got an award at E3 for Best of Show, so it was cool seeing them get their prize, got a cool picture of them doing that. Now let's just kind of move into my overall thoughts from E3. I mean, I already put out different videos for various different games. You had Drive Club, Forza, you had Project Cars, and The Crew. Now, I put out a video for each of those for you to get a sample, and that sample is kind of my point when it comes to my final thoughts on E3. So, E3 has become sort of a double-edged sword. When you talk to a lot of the media people, you'll hear people various times say, oh, it's not what it used to be, it's not the same. And I do agree. Now, I've only been there 6 years prior, so I'm not a seasoned vet like some, but I have been there enough times to see the change of the face of E3 through the years. And one thing I'll tell you is, it's not what it used to be. And the reason is, the world isn't what it used to be. E3 went on long before YouTube was everywhere, before anyone could take any cell phone and get a video out. It was also before companies could do as good a job of marketing their own things without needing the media like they used to. So when it comes to E3, what it's become is a very, very controlled environment. And I think there are a few reasons for that control as well. What really defines media now? I mean, honestly, am I legitimate media? I think originally they were thinking IGNs, GameStops, huge, big hitter places. Now you could be talking about, again, just some guy with a little phone webcam who does a lot of reviews and has a big following. Well, I'm not going to set the line as to what is reviewer or not reviewer, but I think the place is really filled up with a different type of clientele than they originally planned, and that changes the company's mindset on what they want to show. Now, again, it's one of those chicken or the egg things. Now they start to control the content so much. They give you such limited views of certain things, and everybody, all 100,000 people are running to cover the exact same one and only track or one and only scene from a non-racing game. And it kind of makes the content not that valuable. Now for me, I go to E3 with a different mindset. Yes, I bring my cameras and my microphones and everything, and I cover it for you, looking at what is there for a sim racer. But for me, I'm a gamer at heart. I go there and I get excited. This is the ultimate amusement park for gaming. This is where you see what all of the big companies think is important to them. You see where they put their money and what they are putting to the forward of the public, saying, this is what we're proud of, this is what we think is going to make our company this year. And for me, that's very exciting. And it is sometimes some first looks, even though a lot of us get the same first look at the same time, and maybe that's not so exciting. Now, when I put my hardcore sim racing hat on, sure, I could be disappointed. If I walked into that show hoping to see true sim racing content, I'm going to walk out very, very let down each and every year. It's not the intent. This is a gaming show. That's Electronics Entertainment Expo. And not that sim racing isn't entertainment, but they are definitely thinking and pushing more of a gamey side of things. But I embrace that for a different reason. Not just because I love the gaming, but I've said it before and I'll say it again on this show. It's games like Gran Turismo, like Forza, that sell 10 or 5 million copies. Games like Drive Club or even The Crew that will sell millions of copies. It's these games that are going to bring us more simmers. And as much as I'll tell you, I think Gran Turismo, when compared to some of the best sims, is a very gamey sim, and I don't want to offend anybody. No game's created more pro drivers than Gran Turismo, so my hat's off to them. But it's a gamey side of what we do, and it's a gamey side of what I cover here on the show. So a few people are disappointed by my coverage. At least I hope you can understand that those games might be creating the guys that you'll be racing against tomorrow, and that's good enough for me. I hope you've enjoyed my coverage of E3 2014 this year. It was a blast for me. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole, and I'll see you on the track.